what's the expectation when you step into the crown? Like, are you just like, okay, well, obviously the House of Commons are going to watch me and ask me about it, never mind the rest of the world?
So obviously, mad year for you last year, and the show and Bridgerton was brilliant. I think I saw some like mad statistic that like an insane number of people watched it, which is just, you must have thought like,
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that a small number of people watch The Crown. Like you have some public interest there. So like I can imagine you can relate, you know. And I mean, I'd almost bounce that straight back to you. Kind of, how does it fit? What's it like trying to hold that number in your head? You know what I mean? Knowing that much attention is coming at you.
You mean in terms of like how many people will have seen it?
Well, yeah, because like you guys make headlines. Like we have the headline of how many people are watching, whereas with The Crown, people assume everyone's watching, but you make headlines because everyone actually cares about the show.
It's mad. I was thinking this the other day because I'm filming something at the moment and thinking about how separate in my mind like our job is, like the day-to-day going in and acting, and like that's what, I mean, for me that's what I love doing. And then the weirdness that is like then months later, like eons later, this thing comes out. Did you guys expect it to be as like much of a phenomenon as it was?
I mean, I don't think anyone expects a phenomenon.
The nature of a phenomenon. Yeah.
But you have an expectation, like you want, not even an expectation, you have a hope. Like you want to make something and for everyone to watch it and everyone to love it and get wonderful, joyful things from it and have their life enriched in some entertaining way from the thing. That like I would imagine, very similarly for you guys, like you're coming into a show that has a huge reputation. What's the expectation when you step into the crown? Like, are you just like, okay, well, obviously the House of Commons are going to watch me and ask me about it, never mind the rest of the world?
Yeah. I kind of like tried not to think about it, but I remember like when I just got the part, I did feel that insane sense of responsibility, and also playing Diana as well. It was kind of terrifying. Like I tried to like shut that off and like, as you said, like go from a very instinctual place of being like, okay, where's my hook in this character? What am I interested in about her? Like very much trying to leave everything else behind. And The Crown's great because we get a lot of prep time for building character and stuff, which was great. And I really enjoyed that. I worked with an amazing person called Polly Bennett. We just kind of like messed around in this huge studio.
I went to National Youth Theatre with Polly.
Did you?
I'm familiar with Polly's playful energies, but I'm
Polly's way of doing things. She's so brilliant.
That's it, isn't it? It's very kind of
like this, and it's like, yeah, exactly. And playful's the right word. We kind of just played with the character, or like who is Diana, whoever I'm playing, in a way that really broke it down and made it, left all that kind of noise behind for me and made it much more like we were creating something together from the script and from, I don't know.
That's the job, isn't it? It's the noise cancelling. It's like if you can kill noise and create this kind of playful space where the magic happens or the unexpected happens, where you're not self-conscious about whatever mad thing Polly's getting you to do to create a very small real thing.
But they really work because they're very specific and they're so out of your mind. They're so like out of you. They're so weird and silly.
I spent most of my time fighting that second brain. Like I'm trying to kind of get out of English degree brain and into kind of just being an idiot, but with very sophisticated themes brain, if that makes sense. But no, there were no easy ins. Like I'm big on like shoes, which is a silly thing. Like I like getting, like I got Simon's boots day one. I came off the plane into a fitting and I was like, can I have the boots please? So I can march around my house.
Wait, this is really interesting. Explain the shoe. Has this always been a thing, the shoe thing?
Always, since I was training. Oh. Just because, okay, so the way I trained is very, very physical, right? It's very kind of about this feedback loop between how your psychological state will express itself through your body, and then what you do with your body will change your psychological state, and you get this kind of feedback loop in and out.
Yeah.
And so, like, for me, one of the first things I do to build a character is I'll look for the shoes, because what shoes you're wearing change how you hold yourself, where you center your weight, like how you walk. Mm-hmm. whether you slouch, whether you're straight, kind of where you're holding yourself in your chest or your lower back or whatever else. And that kind of starts giving me a little into like what the body of the character is, and then why the body is, brain comes in. It's like, okay, this feels like this physically. What does that feel like mentally? And how does that come back into expressing itself in the body?
There were so many things that I knew that like Diana did physically, like her like head tilt or whatever. But I didn't just want to mimic them. So then me and Polly's job was to break it down and think, we know this physical attribute, this is the way she holds herself. Well, let's go like inside mentally and think about why that is, and then that gives us a justification for doing it. That's really you do it with shoes. That's cool.
Figure out the why. And it's these shortcuts, because if you analyze it, it starts getting academic and it dies a death somewhere. Whereas if you're playing with it, then it's instinctive, and suddenly you can kind of, so why is the head bowed? You know, like, I'm fascinated by that particular physical quirk that you talked about as you're in, the kind of down and up through the eyes, and kind of. Actually, may I ask, what does that mean to you? What does that feeling mean when you kind of go into the why for it?
I think our why for it was a sort of coyness and a shyness that she very much used, and it came in useful when I had the wig, because she had like this fringe, and we sort of, Polly and I discussed using the fringe as like something to look up over, like a shield almost, that you're looking like up over. And I think it was this sort of it was, Polly said, well, imagine like loads of lasers pointing at you, and you're very aware of them the entire time, and you're sort of constantly making up your mind, your relationship to them. So like, but you can kind of feel them. And it was sort of that, it was meant to sort of be that pressure that she was feeling from the family and also the public, in terms of this like oppression that then she couldn't really,
Why, see, you're going to bring a deep and lasting joy to the nation. And if I may say, you both look very much in love.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So Brain 2 now, you can start talking about feeling under attack, if that makes sense, or feeling a pressure of attention. But if I try to play that on the day, I can't play like the theme of feeling under. It's far more interesting if I know what the defense mechanism is. So Simon was very similar. A lot of it was about how he keeps the world out and how that explains itself. And he kind of oscillates between hiding and just like straight up puffing his chest out and going, hit me with the best you got. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I find fascinating about the difference between characters, because they'll all have whatever it is they're defending from, but the techniques they use are what the differences in those people, you know?
I feel like no two actors will have the same reasons for why they do what they do, and also those things probably change the entire time.
But it's roads to the same place, because like your movements are exactly the same as my shoes. We're just starting from different ends of the body. You know?
Exactly.
Like you're getting shot to the head, and I'm kind of carrying myself through my heels, and we kind of meet somewhere.
Yeah.
And essentially, how both of these characters navigate that, and in their own ways triumph over it. Kind of, how do you hold yourself tall with all of that coming in at you?
Well, how do you like, even when you're under that much expectation, as they both are, and the weight of that, you kind of, it's such a battle, I think, for them to figure out who they are in amongst that. Because if you're constantly being observed, as you say, and you're under that pressure of like what you should be doing and that expectation, you kind of don't have a moment to make mistakes and figure out who you are, because every little thing you do is like,
but there's the other now. We're also both dealing with these love stories, which are at the center of how you cope with it. You know, there's the public, there's the expectation, and there's the presentation of what people want to see from you. And then there's like, how do you deal with that through intimacy, through the one person who's meant to be your closest inner circle of safety? And how does that form the real version of you? And then, I don't know, what I picked up from Diana, but maybe I'm imposing this from Simon, is that inner circle is what gets violated. There is no safe space. And that's
you mean in her and Charles's marriage?
Well, yeah, because she's not, as I watch the show, she doesn't feel safe there either. So there's nowhere to be yourself.
Because I think neither of them, they're never afforded that place of complete, like, where they can just be themselves and discover their own intimacy away from everything else. I think it's really interesting how the moment that they have the most productive conversation of their relationship, I think, that you see on screen is when they're at the farm, when they're in like, at the ranch, when they're away from everyone. They literally have to be in the middle of nowhere on a shepherd's ranch on a sheep ranch to have like a productive conversation about themselves and find some happiness, because I don't think they stand a chance in the public eye. But yeah.
You know, I think this might be the most important conversation we've ever had.
Yes.
And the solution is so simple. Anytime either of us feels like we're not getting what we need, we simply need to give that very thing to the other. Because if you learn anything from today,
We both need the same as each other.
You learn anything about, like, I don't know, relationships and intimacy and navigating that from doing? Because I mean, you're like Simon's relationship, like that's such a nuanced one in Bridgerton.
Yeah, no, loads, because that's kind of what I tasked myself with at the beginning of the job. Because Simon's in an archetype that already exists. You know, he's Darcy, he's Heathcliff, he's you know, he's a tall, dark, brooding, broken, emotionally stunted man, and he's also a romantic hero. So how do we bring the hero into that? What makes him worthy of the romance that we're kind of putting him on this pedestal for?
You mean like, how do you humanize someone who is such a, from the outside, like a archetype?
Yeah, but not even just how do you humanize him? How do you make him worthy of the archetype? Like, because we've got to root for him. And if he's just kind of emotionally toxic, why are we rooting for that? You know, so it's not just taking the archetype, but kind of going, what Lego bricks do we need to stick onto this for the 21st century so that we're not just regurgitating Heathcliff or Darcy?
Interesting.
You know what I mean? How do we make him?
Do you think that's something that the series was trying to do? And I guess it totally was, like put all this, like the classics, the Jane Austen, everything into the 21st century to make it more relatable and to take the lessons that she introduced so brilliantly, probably like ahead of her time, as well as like everything in Wuthering Heights and, as we say, Heathcliff, but into this century. Yeah, sick.
It's literally, I mean, those are the conversations I had right at the beginning before we started, because that's one of the things that you expect when you're working with Shondaland. So they're not going to give you something you've seen before. It's kind of, if someone had pitched Bridgerton to me, not with Shondaland attached, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as interesting, because I wouldn't have expected them to bring the sense of progressive mischief that they have. And
that's a great phrase, progressive mischief.
No, but this is it, because also these are bad boys, right? These guys are bad boys. But mischief is so dangerous if you don't handle it responsibly, you know? Because like, there's bad boys, and then there's like lionizing badness, which is not where you want to end up. You know what I mean? You don't want to lionize essentially abusive behavior with the whole just kind of like, well, he's just like that. That's what kind of bad boy. He starts with this, and then we have to redeem that in order for him to become a romantic hero. He has to discover how to use all of that wit and kind of destructive charm and intelligence in a progressive way that is generous to the woman that he ends up marrying. And that's the journey for me. It's figuring out how you take the things that are attractive about these archetypes. They're smart, they're intelligent, they're witty, they're hugely powerful. And then how do you bring that into service of something that can look after other people, that makes them romantically desirable, not just full of potential?
We must make him believe that you are on the very precipice of a proposal, so that he will leave me alone.
I should hope I do not lose my balance then.
No, I should hope not either. For you will be glued to my side all evening. And we must look like we are enjoying ourselves, as difficult as that may be.
Yes, quite.
But I mean, you would have been dealing with a completely different, because you have a lot of source material to work from. And you're kind of navigating this world between acres of source material, very in living memory about real people, Charles and Diana, and the rest of the family. And then you have your imaginative space here, where you guys get to play with fiction. And how do you balance out in your head as an artist, kind of how much of this is useful to you and what you want to do artistically with your imaginative space here?
For me, I think the bridge between the two things for me was the script. I know that sounds really weird, like obvious, but I had about 3 or 4 months when I got the role and started doing the research and everything, when I hadn't yet got the script, and it was a bit, I felt like I was free falling in this like into this dark hole of more and more research and more. Like, I mean, God, if you like Google Diana, there's like new articles every day, which is even like now, which is insane. And you can read, like, there are limitless biographies and newspaper articles and videos and speculation. And I was sort of like, this is great, but this is it was all very factual and but it wasn't actually, I felt like I wasn't learning anything new about her that would actually help me, as you say, artistically, when I turn up on set to do this job, like get into the character or tell her story. And I suppose, but then I got the script and then I was like, oh, actually, I sort of had this mad realization that as much as this is Diana, I'm also for Peter and for this series, this character is almost fictional and you should treat it as such. When I got the scripts, like, I really could just work off what was on the page, because I think you said this a bit earlier, like at the end of the day, it's sort of a love story. It's a marriage. It's two humans navigating these extraordinary circumstances they're under by virtue of their position in society, and how that works out with their development as humans and their relationship. And as soon as I sort of narrowed it down to that, then I could make any research I did much more specific, and also start playing weird fun games with Polly, which
it's always that when it's the why. It's like, what am I actually doing? Am I doing a biography, or am I telling a story about a couple of humans trying to figure out how to be people?
Yeah. I think more often than not, even if stuff harks like to real life and to everything, to people we know or situations we know, like it does just end up being human stories, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's the only way that we understand stories. We have to humanize them. Things aren't real until you feel them, until you can empathize with them. That's what protagonists do in books. Like, you step into the shoes and you feel things through them. And that's, I think, I see our job as like a bridge for that. Yeah,
we're sort of the midway point between, like, people feeling something and the words on the page, and we're sort of the middleman, giving them those.
It was basically a delivery service. Okay, so the other thing I got from school that I took away was, we were always taught that every time you do something, the first thing you ask is, why this story, why now? Because you do Hamlet, and it's been done 100 million times before. You can do all Jane Austen stuff, it's been done 100 million times before. Why are we doing this now? What does it have to contribute? And this is where we came to these conclusions of, okay, we have got a couple of 100 years between Jane Austen and where we're at now, which means we've got like 3, 4, 5, 6 waves of feminism since. And so it was about, where are we carrying this torch? In what direction can we run, and how far can we take it? And what can we offer to who we pass it on to? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And so that's kind of why I deconstructed Simon the way I did, because I was like, okay, cool, if you're Heathcliff, well done, good for you. What do you have to contribute to a 21st century audience?
I think Simon's journey was so interesting in terms of like unpacking masculinity as, especially male characters.
I shall be able to keep such a secret no longer.
That is what I was hoping to discuss. I've only returned to London to deal with my late father's affairs. I'm afraid it leaves me no time to socialize. And so whilst I appreciate your most gracious invitation, Lady Danbury, I must ask you to accept my regrets.
I was just gonna, with the masculinity thing, I was just really interested of like, I'm really fascinated by how people's relationships with their parents reflect on who they are as adults. And I know that that's part of Simon's storyline a lot, with his relationship with his father, right?
Yes, very much. And I think that'll always tie into masculinity as well. So I mean, that's
definitely.
Relationship to your dad, how you inherit responsibility, what you do with that power, what makes you worthy of power. I think that's what will kind of mutate and bend characters a lot, is everything we've been talking about, the expectation versus how you sneak humanity and vulnerability into that. Do you have anything, a fertile ground for you to mind when you were thinking about what Diana's family was versus the one she was coming into?
No, I think just by virtue of my curiosity about that in general, I watched a documentary called In Her Own Words, where Diana narrates like along to different clips of her life, like her story. And it was based on, it was the tapes that went along with the Andrew Morton biography of her. And she speaks for about the first quarter, at least, of the documentary about her relationship with her family. And she says, I just remember the main thing from my childhood was the feeling of loneliness. And that really interested me. And then also she said, I think her parents had quite a fraught marriage. Her mum left when she was quite young. And that really interested me, because I just think if you have any sort of, and I'm not saying, I don't know if like she really felt this or anything, but for the purposes of the character I was creating, and something like a way I could sort of justify or sort of get to like the story that we were telling and like her responses to things and her behaviors, I thought it was really interesting that maybe she experienced this sort of abandonment in some way. And so then when like she met Charles and fell in love with him, she held on so much and like wanted that sort of person, of that place of stability and family so much, because it was sort of filling this hole that had been left. And yeah, I don't know if that's probably like not at all accurate.
I see that 100%.
Like, yeah, it kind of helped me with thinking about like jumping into something very quickly like she did with Charles, and then expecting to be welcomed into this family, right? It's the royal family. She must have thought like, fuck, this is, but anyway,
see it working for that, because like even on like that hunting trip that she does with Philip, where she kind of earns her place in the family, and quite deliberately, and you kind of see the working towards that achievement.
And then like hugging the Queen, and she says like, all I want is to be part of the team, all I want is to be part of this, and the way she calls the Queen mama and all this, I just think it was like, for me it made a lot of sense to be like, okay, this is her motivation for being here.
You were on The Crown, you did all these incredible things with the character and filled in all these gaps. Before any of that, how did you join the team? Tell us about that process.
I was sort of working, like jobbing, trying to earn money, and in London, and also manically running around auditioning for anything I could. They asked me to come in and help read for some of the chemistry reads they were doing between Camilla's, who they were auditioning, and Prince Charles for season 4. So they needed someone to read in for Diana. So I was like, okay. And it wasn't an audition, like I was being paid to be there, and I wasn't going to be on camera. They were just chemistry testing the Camillas.
So, hang on one second. This is fascinating. So you got a call from the casting director to come in and be a reader, essentially.
Be a reader, yeah.
Nina Gold before, like, was she like, boom, Emma's got a Diana-y energy that's going to be helpful.
I think, well, it's really weird to hear in retrospect everyone's perspective on this, which is kind of like insane to hear. But yeah, I think that's at the time I'd met Nina a couple times, and for various things I'd never ended up getting. But so she called and said, would you like to come read? And obviously it wasn't an audition, but I had a big chat with my wonderful agent about it. And obviously that we knew that the Diana role was going to come up at some point, and I'd always been so interested in her and had such a weird like fondness for her. So I was like, that's a complete dream. That would be a dream. Yeah. So I decided, but my agent was like, oh, it's like kind of the perfect situation, because it's like a no pressure audition. The camera's not going to be on you, but there's going to be a room full of like the producers and the directors and casting people, and also people who are so at the top of their game in the industry and wonderful people to meet. So she said, we decided that I would just like prepare as it was an audition. And so I did, and I worked on The Voice with my mum, who's a speech therapist. So we got the voice sort of down, and then learned the lines, and I watched the documentary.
Yeah.
And I just like had some fun, because I wasn't really doing anything anyway at the time. I had a lot of time.
And you see the parallel in that, like in terms of like that trip we just talked about, to what's the name of the house where Diana goes on the hunting trip to impress the family?
Balmoral, yeah.
So like Diana goes out there, it's not an audition, it's totally an audition.
Oh my God, you're drawing parallels, it's mad.
Did you see what I mean though?
Yeah, I never thought of it like that though.
Exactly the same thing. Like you kind of turn up to the family house, and it's not an audition, we're just hanging out, but can you play the games the way we play them? How good are you at ibble-dibble? Do you know what I mean?
Oh my God, I'm having a mental breakdown. This is literally, I've never thought about it.
The lady doth protest too much, because you also walked into the room knowing this. Like you were like, it's not an audition, but I'm going to do it really well and prep.
Also, it was sort of an audition.
Exactly.
Oh my God. How has no one ever drawn that parallel before?
No, surely.
No, literally you're the first. I hadn't even thought about that. That's nuts.
Mate, that was your Balmoral, was that the name?
That was my Balmoral. Oh my God.
And you absolutely killed it. Like, you walked in and you charmed Philip, and you know, you kind of you hugged Nina, I'm sure, and you made her into the family.
Christ, oh my God. That's so insane. I'm going to be thinking about that all day. Yeah, so that was that. And then sort of we had a really great time meeting all of them. And then it was only months later that I got invited to actually audition. Yeah, but it was a weird, like, waiting period of not really knowing what was happening.
This is supposed to be my tour. My tour as Prince of Wales to shore up one of the key countries in the Commonwealth at a very delicate moment politically, and thanks to you.
Thanks to me, people have shown up. Thanks to me, people are interested.
No, thanks to you, people are laughing in my face, booing the crown.
Oh, come on!
But yeah, what was your experience like with Bridgerton and that?
Similarly and not similarly, I'd been auditioning for it for the past like 3 years, just not auditioning. I was working with Shondaland on a show for the 3 years previous. And so, like, you know, I was working with the same people and we had a working relationship. And it was kind of just really good timing. We just finished On for the People as they were casting Bridgerton. And so kind of I was walking out the door and they kind of grabbed me by the collar, like, not you, come back here, we have this thing. And it's
like, that was the, I remember for one of my auditions, I went in and I met with Peter Morgan and Ben Karen, one of the directors, and Rob, the casting director, and we had this afternoon where we just sat and talked about Diana and talked about the show. And those conversations, I remember leaving that room, and I remember my friend had texted me saying, how did it go? And I remember sending them this voice note, and I was like, you know what, even if nothing comes of this and I don't get it, to be in a room with people like that and to find like common ground in talking creatively about a show and things we're passionate about and having really wonderful conversations about creating stuff. Yeah, it was an incredible thing. And I was like, I feel like I've got so much from that even if this doesn't come to anything, that would have totally like.
But you've been doing your job in the room with the casting director and other things, and she kind of chose to pull you in. Like, there are thousands of actors listening to this conversation right now going, oh, you just got a call from Nina, did you, to walk into the room? But you earned that, because every conversation leads to the next.
Yeah.
Like, you're always doing the job in the audition room, whether or not you get that contract.
It's
like,
so true. That's something that was a massive learning curve for me, is that the process of casting and how things are cast, and the more time I spend doing this job, the more you realize that who gets cast is really such a weirdly admin objective thing, where it is really just like, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, who fits.
The fact that you've been doing this good work in the past and then come into the room and contribute all of the preparation that you did means that everyone, I imagine, probably sat there and just breathed a sigh of relief and went, hang on, that works. Get Emma in. We've solved it. We got Diana. What bloody relief.
It's interesting if you think about it as problem solving. I guess what I mean is that I really struggled with the fact that when I was auditioning really relentlessly and not getting anything for a long time, or getting very close to things and not getting stuff, for me it felt so emotional, and it really stressed me out that from the other side it's so unemotional.
Every single one of those rejections was in fact just a piece of the approval that you got later on in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So if you look at it, if I was to offer something to the folks who are listening to this conversation now, it's that every rejection in its own way is you getting the job, just not this one, you're getting the next one.
You appear displeased.
Do I?
We find ourselves seated beside each other, Miss Bridgerton. I would like to think you're happy about that.
Perhaps, Your Grace. It would be better if you refrained from thinking about me at all.
But yeah, what was it like for your show to come out in quarantine and everything? Like, and not have a press tour and not have to be able to be with the cast and everything like that.
Different, but not all awful. I mean, in terms of earlier on, I said, like, the first thing that I tried to ask is, why this show? Why now? Why this story right now? Why now? We were lucky enough to kind of have an answer given to us with the premiere, because everyone was stuck in their houses, feeling a bit miserable. And we came with this joy bomb to kind of dump on everyone, full of glamour and glitz and massive ballrooms and travel and all the things that we couldn't do. We couldn't touch each other. We couldn't be together. We couldn't think about getting glamorous and dancing with our friends and thinking about the perfect romantic love. And we got to kind of give all of that ambition into your living room all at once. And Nicola Coughlan said that it was like throwing a box of Quality Street at the television.
Yes, that's so accurate. Yeah.
And so we were able to deliver that. We kind of got given this purpose as a Regency Father Christmas television program. And it was a joy to kind of deliver that and be part of delivering that. And so the press tour became easier because you just get to talk about delivering this joyful thing that people could do with. And I was particularly thrilled with that because I think finding an integrity and joy is really important to our industry, because I think often you'll watch really miserable programs and go, oh, I didn't enjoy it very much, but it was very good because I'm sad now.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah.
Joy, to finding joy in the work, to delivering joy to people when we need joy, to delivering hope when we need hope, to delivering on romance. Like, people kind of look down on the romance genre. It's just like, our lives are built on looking for romance. How was it with people receiving the crown kind of in the year that we had? Like, was there a difference to what you expected to kind of what you received back from people?
I don't really know what I expected, to be honest. I remember feeling quite sad that I wasn't together with the cast, because it felt like such an ensemble to bring it to life when we were there on the job. Like, when those days when like we had all the royal family in together were so chaotic in the best way, because everyone has insane amount of energy. And everyone is quite like loud and fantastic.
You could say that sentence, when we had the whole royal family in together.
And we had the whole royal family in, and we had our whole crown team in, like, and it was just pandemonium. And it kind of felt like a very good family Christmas day, when everything, you get to the end of the day and you feel like I've used so much energy. I'm so knackered, but in the best way. And it was really sad that we couldn't all be there together. And also that, yeah, I couldn't be there with Josh and like promoting it in person. And also there's less like flying around and going to events and people commenting on what you're wearing at events, rather than like you talking about your work.
But you get to talk about it to more people, because I'll tell you what, I got to do a press tour from the living room, but also talk to more people, because like we moved from Thailand to Indonesia
in one day.
Australia,
exactly.
in a couple of hours, which would have been impossible, which meant we got to talk to more people. And so particularly because we're both on Netflix shows, it's like you're dealing with a global audience.
What's next for you? What are you doing next?
I am working on a Dungeons and Dragons movie, and a movie called The Great Man with the Russos, and a couple of other little bits and pieces, and just kind of just going to work, just keeping my head down and doing the thing. See, my way of coping with that, the kind of learning to adjust, is I haven't. But I just kind of put my blinkers on and go to work. And then come home.
Because at least there you're like focused and you can't really, like, you're in so much.
What I'm doing? I'm basically just a racehorse. Like, I need to just go to the stables, eat my hay, put the blinkers on, go to work, run, get tired, come home, go to sleep, repeat. That's my best way of working. However, I have heard that you are getting on stage soon, which is very exciting.
Which I haven't.
What's going on with that? Have you done stage work before? Is that
it's
it?
sort of where I started. I kind of only had done theatre until my first film, my first TV job. So it feels coming home. And we workshopped the play in November, actually the week after The Crown had just come out. So it was a great distraction, as you said. It was literally, I think The Crown came out on the Sunday and I started rehearsals the Monday. So it was like so good to just be focused and in a room, just like that playfulness, that kind of like, rehearsing is so much fun. So that'll be great.